The air over the Kunar Valley felt heavy, like a held breath that refused to release. Heat shimmered above the rocky slopes, and the smell of burned fuel and gunpowder floated through the wind. U.S. soldiers crouched behind battered armored vehicles, pinned down for nearly 2 hours. Each time one of them dared to peek above the ridge, a crack echoed, sharp, precise, merciless, and dust exploded inches from their helmets. Somewhere on the opposite ridge, an enemy sniper was hunting them. The convoy's mission had been simple: escort a supply line through the valley and secure the pass. But halfway through, the lead Humvee erupted in fire. The explosion had shattered the calm, and from that moment, no one had moved more than a few feet. The general's voice roared through the radio. "Where's my overwatch? Why hasn't that sniper been neutralized yet?" "Sir, we've tried. 14 shots. All clean misses," came the reply. The general's jaw tightened. He was a veteran, 2 tours in Iraq, 1 in Syria, but he'd never seen a sniper this patient, this accurate, this relentless. The enemy's bullet placement told him everything. This wasn't luck. This was skill. He grabbed the radio mic and barked, "Any snipers left?" For a moment, silence reigned. Static hissed softly through the channel. Soldiers exchanged nervous looks. Some wiped the sweat from their brows. Others checked their rifles again, as if a miracle adjustment could make the next bullet land true. Then, from the back of the formation, a quiet voice answered. "Sergeant Dana Cole, sir." Heads turned. Even the wind seemed to pause. Dana Cole, the quiet sniper from Alpha Company, wasn't known for speaking much. She was small-framed, her face always half-hidden behind a brown scarf and mirrored glasses. To many of the soldiers, she was invisible, the kind of person you forget is even there, until she shoots. The general lowered his binoculars, looking toward her. "Cole, you still got your rifle?" "Yes, sir." He motioned her forward. "You're up." Donna stepped out of the shade, her boots crunching against the gravel. She carried an old, battle-worn rifle, a custom-modified M2010 ESR with her initials scratched faintly into the stock. It wasn't as new as the others' rifles, but it looked loved, like every scratch had a story. The other snipers glanced at each other as she passed. A few smirked. One shook his head. "She's good," one whispered, "but not that good. 3.8 clicks? No way." Dana ignored them. Her mind was already elsewhere, on the wind, the distance, the light shift in the valley air. She had seen this kind of battlefield before, not in war, but in the snow-covered Rockies where she grew up. There, silence ruled, and patience wasn't just a virtue. It was survival. She reached the edge of the ridge, dropped flat onto her belly, and unfolded her bipod. Her spotter, Lieutenant Harris, hurried up beside her. "You sure about this?" he asked, his tone uncertain. Dana didn't look at him. "Give me range and wind." Harris scanned with his laser rangefinder. 3,812 meters. Wind 5 to 6 knots, shifting left. Humidity's high. That's a hell of a shot, Cole." "I know," she said softly, adjusting her scope. Behind them, the general folded his arms, watching through his binoculars. Every soldier in the unit seemed to stop breathing. The only sounds were the wind and the distant, mocking crack of the enemy sniper's next shot. Another bullet that struck inches from a sergeant's boot, close enough to make him curse. Dana didn't flinch. She studied the terrain like a painter studying a blank canvas. "See that ridge?" she said to Harris. "There's a reflection, half-glint, near the third outcrop. That's him." Harris followed her gaze, squinting. "I don't see. Don't look for movement. Look for stillness," she said quietly. "That's where he is." For a moment, the spotter finally saw it, the faintest shimmer of glass, the telltale curve of a scope lens. Got him, Harris breathed. Dana didn't smile. She only inhaled slowly and let her finger rest gently on the trigger guard. She didn't fire, not yet. She was listening. The wind was talking, shifting through the valley's mouth, changing its pitch like a musician tuning a string. Most shooters read wind through meters and numbers. Dana read it through feeling, through the rhythm in her chest and the whisper of dust across her cheek. 14 missed, Harris muttered under his breath. What makes you think? I don't think, Dana interrupted softly. I wait. Her calmness unnerved him. Around them, the soldiers stayed frozen, waiting for something to happen. Minutes stretched. The sun climbed higher, turning the air into liquid gold. Flies buzzed lazily, and the scent of sweat and oil mixed in the heat. Somewhere, another rifle cracked, a missed shot from a faraway support team, still trying to find the enemy's nest. Dana didn't react. Her scope never wavered. Her heartbeat slowed until she could feel each pulse between breaths. She remembered her father's voice, steady, deep, the kind that settled storms. You can't force the mountain, kid. You wait till it talks. And then, faintly, the mountain spoke. A lull, a silence between gusts. Dana whispered, "Hold for the lull." Her finger hovered near the trigger. Her eye stayed glued to the lens. Every calculation, every instinct, every breath lined up perfectly that fraction of time. Then, movement. A glint, a flicker. The enemy sniper shifting slightly, confident in his distance. Dana's breathing stopped. Her finger tightened, but just before she fired, a loud explosion echoed nearby. Artillery landed close, shaking the ground. Dust rose, clouding her vision. Damn it! Harris coughed. We lost sight. But Dana didn't move. Even through the dust, she could still feel where the target was. The world around her blurred into gray and noise, but inside that fog, her focus sharpened to a single point. Through the static of the radio, the general's voice came again, rough with tension. Cole, status? Are you seeing him? She didn't answer. She was beyond words now, beyond command, beyond fear. Slowly, the dust began to settle. Through her scope, the ridge came back into view, clearer this time. The glint was still there, smaller now, lower, like the sniper had ducked. Dana made a single adjustment to her elevation knob. Half a click. Nothing more. Harris frowned. That's not enough correction, Dana whispered. It's enough. The general turned to his aide. Is she going to shoot or what? She's waiting for the right wind, sir. Right wind? The general gritted his teeth. At this point, I'll take any wind. But then he saw her shoulders relax, not with exhaustion, but with decision. Something invisible had shifted. Dana's finger touched the trigger, light as breath. The general lowered his binoculars and whispered to no one in particular, God help us if she's wrong. And then Dana exhaled. A deep, controlled breath that carried the weight of 14 failures and the hope of 30 trapped soldiers. She whispered a single word under her breath, not prayer, not command, but memory. Now, her finger began to squeeze. The world seemed to narrow into one straight line, from her eye, through the scope, across the hot valley air, and into that distant shimmer where death waited. The trigger broke clean. The bullet left the barrel at nearly 1 kilometer per second, spinning perfectly through the heat, slicing the mountain's silence. And as it flew, Dana didn't watch. She just closed her eyes and listened, for that sound she had known since childhood, when the wind shifted after a true shot. The sound that told her she'd hit exactly where she meant to. When the echo of Dana's shot faded across the Cooner Valley, time itself seemed to hesitate. No one spoke. Dust drifted lazily through the air, carried by the mountain wind. Then came the first voice LT, Harris, whispering into his scope. Target down. She hit him. She actually hit him. Cheers erupted behind them, echoing off the ridges. Men who'd been pinned for hours now raised their heads, laughing, shouting, thumping each other on the back. To them, it felt like victory. But Dana didn't cheer. She stayed prone, cheek still against the rifle stock, eyes fixed on the scope. Let's not celebrate yet, she said quietly. He might have friends. Her voice carried the same stillness as her aim, low, steady, grounded. The general's voice broke through the radio. Confirmed kill, Sergeant Cole. Pull back to base. You just saved 30 men. There was a pause, then a second voice cut in, filled with awe. That's a record shot. Cole over 3,800 meters. How the hell did you even? Dana clicked her safety on and stood, brushing the dust from her uniform. Wind spoke, she said simply. Those who didn't know her thought it was a joke. But Harris understood. Dana didn't speak in metaphors. She meant it literally. Back at the forward operating base, the sun was setting, painting the desert gold. Soldiers clustered around Dana as she cleaned her rifle with methodical precision. Come on, Cole, tell us how you did it. One of them urged. 14 of us tried and missed. You, what took one shot? She didn't look up. One shot's all you get, she said softly. Yeah, but how? Another soldier asked, leaning closer. Laser rangefinders, ballistic software, what did you use? She shrugged. Breathing, patience. Her words frustrated them. To them, sniping was science angles, numbers, rangefinders, wind meters. To Dana, it was something older. When the crowd finally dispersed, Harris stayed behind. You're not even going to celebrate? Dana shook her head. Nothing to celebrate, Lieutenant. Someone's son died out there today. Same as ours. He watched her disassemble her rifle, piece by piece, each motion careful, reverent. You ever miss? He asked. She looked up then, meeting his gaze. Once, she said. I was 14. That night. Sleep wouldn't come easily to Dana. The barracks buzzed with laughter and pride. Someone had already nicknamed her the Ghost of Cunner Ridge. Photos of her rifle were circulating through the base. The general himself had requested a debrief. But she didn't feel like a ghost. She felt like a human being, with one more weight added to her shoulders. She sat outside her tent, rifle across her knees, eyes fixed on the horizon. The mountains stretched like shadows under the moonlight. Her mind drifted backward to the Rockies, to a small cabin that smelled of pine and coffee. Her father had been a game warden, a man who spoke little and listened much. On cold mornings, he would take her hunting before dawn. Don't just look, Dana, he would say, crouching beside her in the snow. Listen. The forest tells you more than your eyes ever will. He was the first to teach her stillness. They would wait for hours, unmoving, watching the trees. Sometimes they never fired a shot. Her father would smile and say, That's a good day. The world's better when you can admire it, not break it. But one winter, everything changed. A blizzard came down hard, and a poacher got trapped on the wrong side of the ridge. Her father went out to help and never came back. When they found him, his rifle was gone, and the man he'd gone to rescue had vanished. At 14, Dana had picked up her father's old rifle, the same one. She would later rebuild into her military weapon, and spent years mastering it. She never said why she joined the army. Maybe it was to serve, maybe to find focus. But deep down, she just needed silence. Now, years later, as she sat under the Afghan moon, she realized the silence had followed her. Harris approached quietly, carrying 2 mugs of instant coffee. He handed her one. You know, You could at least act like you just broke a world record." She smirked faintly. "Records are just numbers. Wind doesn't care about numbers." He chuckled and sat beside her. "Still, I've never seen anything like it. How do you know when to fire?" She took a sip of coffee, eyes on the distant ridges. "When the valley went quiet. Every place has a rhythm. You wait until it stops breathing, then you pull. Do you ever get scared?" Harris asked after a long silence. Donna looked at him, almost surprised by the question. "Every time," she said. "Fear keeps the heartbeat steady. You learn to make friends with it." The next morning, the base erupted into movement. The general called for Dana to report to the command tent. Inside, a handful of officers were gathered around a digital map, replaying her shot data. The general turned as she entered. "Sergeant Cole," he said, gesturing toward the screen. "That's your bullet trajectory. You adjusted only half a click after wind shift. You do realize that's statistically impossible?" She nodded once. "Yes, sir." He studied her for a moment. "Then why do it?" "Because numbers can lie," she said evenly. "Wind doesn't." The room fell silent. Some of the officers exchanged puzzled looks. The general finally smiled, shaking his head. "You're something else, Cole." "She's lucky," one colonel muttered. The general turned sharply. "No, luck doesn't hit a man's right shoulder at 3,812 meters. That's skill, or something beyond it." Dana stood there quietly, her eyes calm, her face unreadable. The general finally nodded. "Dismissed, Sergeant. And good work. You saved lives today." She saluted, turned, and left without another word. Outside, she found Harris waiting. "They gonna give you a medal?" he asked. "Probably," she said, slipping her gloves back on. "You gonna accept it?" She didn't answer. Instead, she looked back toward the mountain where it had all happened. It was still there, silent, unchanged, as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. "You know what my father used to say?" She murmured. "When you shoot right, the mountain keeps your secret." Harris frowned. "You think anyone will ever know what that means?" She smiled faintly. "Doesn't matter." They stood there in silence for a while, the desert wind curling around them. In the distance, a helicopter lifted off, carrying supplies and stories of the quiet woman who hit the impossible shot. That evening, the camp gathered for a small celebration. Music played from a tinny speaker, and soldiers joked about how they'd never doubt a quiet one again. Dana sat apart, polishing her rifle. A young private approached, nervously holding a notepad. "Sergeant Cole, ma'am. Can I get your signature? My brother's a sniper in training. He'd want it." She looked up at him, then at the notepad. After a moment, she nodded and signed her name. "D. Cole. Tell him something for me," she said as the young man started to leave. He turned wide-eyed. "Yes, ma'am?" "Tell him the shot isn't the hard part. The waiting is." The private nodded, clutching the note like a relic. Donna watched him go, then looked down at the rifle across her knees. The metal gleamed faintly in the lamplight. She whispered to herself, barely audible, "One shot, one life." And in that quiet, the sounds of laughter, engines, and celebration faded, leaving only the hum of the desert wind, whispering secrets only she could hear. 3 days after the shot that silenced a valley, Sergeant Donna Cole was already back in the field. The military doesn't give legends time to rest. The world might have been whispering her name across bases, but in the command tent, the maps were already being redrawn. Operation Falcon Reach, a high-stakes rescue mission, was underway. Intelligence had located a U.S. recon team trapped in an abandoned village 40 kilometers east of Asadabad. The team's radio was dead, and drone surveillance showed heavy enemy presence. Snipers would be key in providing cover. "Cole," the general said, pointing to a red circle on the satellite feed. "We need eyes here. High ground, 2,000 meters out. You'll have visibility over the entire grid. You're our long rifle again." Dinah studied the map quietly, her finger tracing the terrain lines. The slope was steep, wind unpredictable, and the elevation drop massive. A nightmare for any sniper. "When do we move?" she asked. 0500. You'll have Lieutenant Harris as your spotter again." He paused, his gaze softening. "And Cole, don't make history this time. Just bring them home." She nodded once. "Yes, sir." By dawn, the mountains were painted in pale gold. Dana and Harris moved silently up the ridge, boots sinking into the loose gravel. The air grew thinner with every step, and the cold bit at their lungs. The climb was brutal, but Dana moved like someone in rhythm with the land, patient, deliberate, methodical. Harris panted behind her. "You ever get tired?" "Only when I stop," she said without turning. He chuckled breathlessly. "You're not human, Cole." She stopped and looked back. "Neither is the wind, Lieutenant." "Keep up." By the time they reached the overlook, the sun had fully risen. The valley below stretched out like a painting, abandoned stone houses, shattered vehicles, and shadows that hid more than they revealed. Donna dropped to her stomach, setting her rifle on the bipod. Harris unfolded his scope beside her. "Targets?" she asked. He scanned the valley. 3 tangos near the main building. 2 more on the ridge north. And he hesitated. "I think they've got 1 sniper covering the east approach." Dana's expression didn't change. "Then he'll see us if we move." "Yep, he's good too. He's glassing the same range we are." "Let him look," she said. They settled into position. Hours passed. The wind shifted. The sun moved, and the valley breathed, expanding and contracting in waves of light and shadow. For most soldiers, waiting was torture. For Dana, it was meditation. Her scope became her world, a circle of truth surrounded by blur. Every leaf, every heat shimmer, every grain of dust told her something. 2 clicks east, Harris whispered. Enemy sniper moved. "He's repositioning." Dana adjusted slightly. "He's testing the air. You think he knows where we are?" "Not yet," she murmured. "But he will." The radio crackled softly. Command's voice came through. "Eagle 1 to Ghost. Extraction choppers inbound in 30 minutes. We need suppression on that north ridge before they move." "Copy," Harris replied. Dana exhaled slowly. "Let's start with the spotter on the left." She adjusted her rangefinder, calculated the drop. Her mind processed numbers faster than most computers could. Gravity, temperature, humidity, angle, all melted into instinct. 3.6 clicks, Harris said. "Half wind left," Dana replied. "Holding elevation." She steadied the crosshairs over a figure standing beside a rusted truck. He leaned lazily against the door, unaware that his next breath would be his last. "On your mark," she whispered. "Send it," Harris said. The rifle cracked. A split second later, the figure crumpled. "1 down," Harris confirmed. "No reaction yet." Dana reloaded calmly. "They'll find him soon. Then they'll look for us." Minutes later, chaos erupted below. The insurgents began shouting, weapons raised, pointing toward the ridgeline. Dust clouds swirled as they fired blindly into the wind. "Here we go," Harris muttered, ducking slightly. Bullets whizzed overhead, striking rocks with sharp pings. Dana didn't flinch. She adjusted her scope, tracking the enemy sniper's movement through the haze. "There," she said. "East Ridge. 4 o'clock." Harris found him, a flash of metal, the faint curve of a barrel. Range? 3,900 meters, he said. You're kidding me. Dana's lips curved faintly. Almost familiar distance. She adjusted her windage, hands steady despite the chaos. Cole, Harris warned. That's a long shot under pressure. You sure? Pressure's just noise, she said quietly. And I don't listen to noise. The wind gusted. She waited. The gust died. Her breathing slowed until it was barely there. Trigger squeeze. Silence. Impact. The enemy sniper's scope went dark. Harris blinked. You hit him. First round. Of course, she said, eyes still in the scope. Wind spoke. The firefight continued for nearly an hour, but with Dana covering the ridges, the rescue team moved in and out safely. Every time an enemy tried to flank, her bullet met them first. When the last helicopter lifted off, the valley was quiet again, eerily so. Dana exhaled, rolling onto her back. Mission complete, Harris said through the radio. All friendlies accounted for. No casualties. The general's voice came through, relieved. Outstanding work, Cole. Extraction inbound for your position. Copy, she replied softly. As the chopper approached, Harris looked at her, shaking his head. You ever think you were born for this? She glanced up at the spinning blades overhead. No one's born for this. Some of us just stop running from it. Back at base, the celebration was louder this time. 2 successful operations, 0 losses, all under her scope. Dana avoided the crowd as always. She walked toward the edge of camp, where the desert met the night. Harris followed her, hands in his pockets. They're talking about promoting you, you know. I'm not interested. He smirked. You ever interested in anything? She thought for a moment. Stillness? Stillness? She looked at the horizon, a black line that seemed endless. When everything around you is chaos, stillness is where you survive. That's all shooting is. Finding stillness before you break the silence. Harris studied her for a moment. You make it sound poetic. She smiled faintly. War isn't poetry, Lieutenant. It's math written in blood. We just try to balance the equation. Later that night, as the camp lights dimmed, Dana sat alone by her rifle. She cleaned it piece by piece, her hands moving with ritual precision. She thought of her father again, how he had always told her that silence wasn't empty. It was full of answers. Tonight, she understood. Every shot she took was a question to the wind, and every echo that came back was the world replying. In the distance, thunder rumbled. A storm was coming, the kind that rolled through the mountains and erased tracks, voices, and footprints alike. She whispered into the dark, maybe that's what I am. Just a sound carried by the wind. And as the storm approached, Dana Cole, the quiet woman who once hit an impossible shot, closed her eyes and listened. Not for orders, not for praise, but for the one thing she trusted most, silence. The valley lay under a deceptive calm. Dust rose in faint swirls, and sunlight glinted off jagged stones. Dana Cole had positioned herself atop a ridge, overlooking a supply convoy trapped behind enemy fire. The distance was staggering. 3,812 meters. 14 snipers had already tried and failed. And now she was the last hope. She adjusted the bipod on her rifle, her gloved fingers methodical. Harris crouched beside her, rangefinder in hand, sweat streaking his dust-covered face. You sure about this? He whispered. Dana didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her eye was already pressed against the scope. She was measuring not just distance, but wind, temperature, humidity, and mirage distortion. Every environmental factor was a variable, and she calculated them all in a calm so absolute it seemed unnatural. Below, the enemy sniper moved. He had spotted the convoy's vulnerability and was poised to pick off another soldier. His barrel gleamed in the sun. The general's orders echoed in her mind. Neutralize him, or they won't make it. Dana inhaled deeply, slowing her heartbeat. She could feel the valley's rhythm, the rising heat creating subtle air currents, the whisper of dust over the rocks, the distant rush of the river below. She had learned to listen to these rhythms back in the Rockies as a girl hunting deer. Now the mountains spoke in war. Harris scanned with binoculars. Target moving left to right. Wind is shifting. You'll need. I know, Dana interrupted softly. Half a click adjustment. Wait for the lull. Seconds stretched. Every breath felt like an eternity. Harris kept his voice low, reporting changes in speed and direction. Dana tracked the target with obsessive precision, her finger resting lightly on the trigger. She imagined her father beside her, whispering, "Listen, not aim. The world tells you where the shot goes." The enemy sniper crouched to reload, unaware that his movements were feeding Dana's calculations. The wind shifted slightly, rustling a nearby bush. Dana waited. Her pulse slowed to a near stop. Time itself seemed to bend. Then it happened. A lull. Perfect, complete, silent. The kind of pause that lasts only a heartbeat. Dana exhaled and squeezed. The rifle cracked, the sound snapping through the valley. Dust rose where the enemy sniper had stood. The shot was clean, deadly, impeccable. Harris froze. Did you just? Dana lowered her rifle slowly, eyes still on the scope. The enemy sniper had fallen, his weapon clattering against the rocks. The valley seemed to exhale in relief. Below, the convoy erupted in cheers. Soldiers who had been pinned down shouted, clapped, and pounded their helmets. But Dana didn't move. She was already calculating the next threat, already listening to the wind. The general's voice came through the radio. Sergeant Cole. Confirmed kill? At 3,812 meters? Are you kidding me? No, sir, she said softly. It's done? Harris shook his head. You just broke every record. No one has ever. How did you do it? Dana shrugged faintly. Patience, sir. That's all. The general remained silent for a moment, incredulous. Then he muttered, almost to himself, "Who trained her?" The convoy continued its retreat under cover fire. Dana coordinated through her scope. Every insurgent who attempted to flank was neutralized before they could reach firing range. Each shot was deliberate, measured, flawless. 14 had failed. Dana didn't. She didn't celebrate. The weight of what she had done pressed against her chest. 14 misses had cost lives. One precise shot had saved them, but the shadow of death was never far. She glanced down the ridge, imagining the enemy sniper's life ending, and the faintest pang of guilt flickered across her mind. Harris noticed her stillness. You okay? He asked. Dana nodded. I will be. Just focus. The threat isn't over until everyone's safe. By the time the convoy reached cover, Dana had fired dozens of rounds, each precise, each necessary. She didn't revel in the impact of her skill. She saw only the result, lives preserved. When she finally lowered her rifle, Harris looked at her in awe. I've seen a lot of snipers in my life, he said quietly. You're different. Dana looked away, scanning the distant mountains. I'm just listening, she said. Hours later, at the base, the camp was abuzz. Soldiers shared the story of the impossible shot, of how Dana had silenced a sniper who had defied all odds. In mess halls and tents, her name began to circulate quietly, the ghost of Kuna Ridge. Reporters wanted interviews. Commanders wanted details for training manuals. Dana Cole, however, avoided the limelight. She cleaned her rifle meticulously, like a sculptor handling a fragile creation. One officer finally approached. "Sergeant Cole, how did you make that shot?" She didn't meet his eyes. "I listened." The officer frowned. "Listened? Every place has a rhythm," she explained softly. "I just waited until it paused. Then I acted. That's all anyone can do." Harris, watching from a distance, shook his head in amazement. "Stillness as a weapon," he muttered. "Yes," Dana said quietly. "It's the only weapon that never fails if you respect it." Later, in her tent, Dana sat on the cot, staring at the ceiling. The night was quiet, but the images of the valley kept replaying in her mind, the convoy frozen in fear. The enemy sniper crouched behind rocks, the impossible distance stretching like a void between life and death. She held her rifle across her lap, the metal cold under her fingers. Each piece was polished, precise, almost sacred. She thought about her father in the Rockies, teaching her to hear the forest, teaching her patience, teaching her that silence was not empty. It was full of meaning. Now, in the chaos of war, those lessons had saved lives. 14 misses had been erased by one perfect shot. She had done the impossible. But the triumph was silent. It had no voice. It lived only in the wind. As the base quieted and soldiers slept, Anna closed her eyes. The shot was done, the lives saved, yet her mind remained alert, listening, waiting. The mountains whispered. The wind answered. And somewhere, far away, a lesson learned long ago whispered back, "Stillness is power." She lay there, rifle beside her, pulse slowing, breathing even. One shot, one pause, one moment. And in that moment, the impossible became reality. By the time Dana Cole returned to base, news of her shot had already spread like wildfire. Phones buzzed, radios crackled, and soldiers whispered in corners, repeating the impossible distance to 3,812 meters. Some called it a miracle. Others called it sheer skill. In every case, her name became a quiet legend, the ghost of Kuna Ridge. Dana walked through the camp, helmet in hand, rifle slung across her back, careful to keep her expression neutral. She had done her duty, as she always did, and nothing more. But everywhere she went, eyes followed. Soldiers approached her, eager to shake the hand of the sniper who had defied both gravity and probability. Reporters were already requesting interviews, while command officers scrutinized every movement she made. "Sergeant Cole," the general said, pulling her aside, "that shot, it's going to be studied for years. Not just by the army, but by militaries around the world. They want the details." Dana adjusted the strap of her rifle. "Sir, I only did my job." The general raised an eyebrow, unimpressed by humility. "Doing your job doesn't require hitting someone at 3,812 meters. You just made history, Cole. Own it." Dana said nothing. She was used to praise, but it never changed her. The attention made her uneasy. 14 men had missed. One shot had saved lives, yes. But that one shot also represented the fragility of life, the terrifying precision of death, and the responsibility that came with such skill. Inside the mess hall, a crowd had gathered. Soldiers who had once doubted her now wanted stories, advice, even autographs. Some younger soldiers stared at her rifle like it was a relic of divine intervention. Dana cleaned her rifle carefully, each motion deliberate, each piece laid out with meticulous care. "Sergeant Cole," a young private shouted, "can I get your autograph? My brother's training to be a sniper. He'd want it." Dana looked at the private, measuring his eagerness. She signed her name on a scrap of paper, D. Cole. Then she whispered quietly, "Tell him this. The shot isn't the hard part. The waiting is." The private blinked, clutching the paper as if it were gold. Dana turned back to her rifle, silent again, while the soldiers continued their chatter around her. Harris approached, hands in his pockets. "You know, they're calling you a legend now?" "Legends don't matter," she said softly. "Lives do." He shook his head, still in awe. "You saved 30 men with one bullet. 30 lives. That does matter." Dana's eyes were distant, thoughtful. "One bullet can save or kill," she said. "It doesn't change the world. It just changes the moment." Days later, the media descended on the base. Cameras clicked, reporters asked questions, and officers insisted she attend briefings. Dana accepted none of it. She moved quietly through corridors, avoiding cameras, keeping her eyes down. She didn't care for headlines, and she certainly didn't care for fame. Her focus had always been on precision, patience, and silence. Recognition was noise. The general pulled her into the command tent once more. "Cole, the Pentagon wants a full report. I want your logs, your adjustments, everything. This will help train the next generation of snipers." Dana nodded, already thinking about how to record everything meticulously. "I'll have it ready, sir." "Good," he said, eyeing her carefully. "And congratulations. You earned it?" Dana didn't respond. Congratulation was irrelevant. Her mind was on the valley, on the soldiers pinned behind the convoy, on the echo of the shot as it sailed across 3,812 meters. The weight of responsibility pressed against her chest, heavier than any medal or recognition could. That night, Dana sat alone outside her tent. The camp buzzed with activity, soldiers laughing, radios playing, distant helicopter blades chopping the air. But she sat quietly, rifle across her knees, staring at the horizon. Harris joined her, offering a thermos of coffee. "Ever think about what people are saying? The news, the accolades?" Dana shook her head. "It doesn't matter. Those voices aren't the ones I answer to." "You mean the ones in the valley?" "Yes," she said softly. "The ones who can't speak anymore. I answer to them. That's why every shot has to count." Harris studied her, realizing he would never fully understand the depth of her focus. "Do you ever feel haunted?" Dana looked at the stars, the mountains silhouetted against the darkening sky. "I do," she admitted. "Not by the shot itself, but by the weight it carries. Every bullet has consequences, and some of them follow you home." She sipped her coffee. "Fame doesn't follow you home. Recognition doesn't sit beside your bed. The ones who do are the ones you saved or the ones you didn't." Harris nodded, silent. For once, there were no jokes, no chatter. Just two soldiers listening to the desert night. The next morning, training sessions began. Officers and instructors asked her to demonstrate, to teach, to explain. Dana reluctantly agreed. She demonstrated breathing techniques, wind reading, and scope adjustments, but she refused to exaggerate, refused to perform for attention. She spoke only of patience, focus, and silence, skills honed through years of quiet practice, isolation, and discipline. Her students were mesmerized. They realized that Dana's true strength wasn't her skill with a rifle, but her mastery of herself, her ability to wait, to observe, to control every thought and emotion. In her calm, they saw the difference between chance and certainty. After the session, Harris approached her. "You know," he said, "they're going to want you to write a book or go on TV, or at least be on every medal ceremony." Dana smiled faintly. "I write my book with bullets, not words." "You mean?" "Yes," she said. "I've already written the story. And every word cost someone's life or saved it. I don't need the world reading it." By the end of the week, the story had reached every corner of the base. The general made a quiet announcement. Dana Cole would be awarded a medal for valor. She accepted it in silence, standing tall and composed, receiving applause she neither sought nor enjoyed. Back in her tent, the metal lay on the cot beside her rifle. She ran her fingers over the cold metal, feeling its weight, but not its importance. The lives she saved, the soldiers she watched crawl from under fire, the convoy that made it home because of her, those were the real medals. Harris watched her quietly. "You'll never say you're proud, will you?" "I don't have to," she said. "The world doesn't measure what matters." That night, as the camp settled into uneasy sleep, Dana closed her eyes. Memories of the valley, the distant ridges, and the impossible distance replayed in her mind. Recognition, fame, medals, none of it mattered. Only the sound of the wind and the lives she had touched were real. And in that quiet, she understood the truth. Fame could follow, accolades could shine, and people could whisper her name for generations. But the weight of responsibility, the burden of each life saved or lost, that was hers alone. The base was quiet, but Dana Cole's mind was alive with movement. Others rested, laughed, or chased small distractions, but Dana had little time for noise. She returned to her tent, unpacked her gear, and began the meticulous ritual she had followed for years, cleaning, inspecting, and calibrating her rifle. Each motion was precise, almost meditative. Every piece of the N2A10 ESR was aligned, balanced, and understood, not just as a weapon, but as an extension of herself. Harris walked in, carrying a folder of notes from the previous operations. "Cole," he said, leaning against the doorway, "everyone wants to know how you do it. Reports, debriefs, training manuals, they're all asking. You ever think about explaining it?" Dana didn't look up. "There's nothing to explain," she said softly. "Just practice, observation, and patience." Harris raised an eyebrow. "That's it?" She finally glanced at him, eyes calm and unwavering. "Do you want the truth? Or the sanitized version for the manuals?" He shrugged. "Truth." Dana smiled faintly. "Then it's going to sound strange to most people. I've been doing this my whole life." She told him about the Rockies, her childhood home. Her father had been a game warden, quiet, observant, and disciplined. From a young age, he taught her to move silently, to observe without interference, and to respect the land. Hunting wasn't about killing. It was about understanding. "Every forest, every mountain has a rhythm," he would say. "The one who listens can survive. The one who doesn't becomes prey." Dana had taken that lesson to heart. She spent hours in the snow and wind, learning how to track, how to measure distance with her eyes alone, how to feel wind shifts before they happened. By the time she was 16, she could estimate ranges with uncanny accuracy, predict movement, and fire precisely without a scope. Her father had smiled once, saying, "One day, that skill will keep more than just deer alive." When he died in a blizzard during a rescue mission, Dana inherited not only his old rifle, but his philosophy. She understood that shooting was as much about patience, timing, and observation as it was about strength or reflex. And so, she trained herself in silence, mastering stillness until it became instinct. Harris listened, amazed. "So, this all started as hunting?" Dana nodded. "Hunting, survival, discipline. The Army just gave me the tools to apply it differently." He frowned. "But no one else can do what you do. Most snipers rely on tech, calculations, formulas." I rely on the world," she interrupted. "Tech can guide you, but it can't teach you rhythm. It can't feel the valley, or the wind, or the heat. Only listening can." Harris leaned closer, curiosity growing. "And the training in the Army?" "That helped refine it," she admitted. "Long-range calculations, ballistic tables, advanced optics, they're necessary. But the real edge isn't in the scope or rifle. It's in the calm before the trigger, the patience to wait for the perfect moment, and the focus to pull the shot only when all conditions align. He ran his hand through his hair, shaking his head. You make it sound simple, but it's not. No one else can do it. Dana's gaze returned to her rifle. That's because most people listen too loudly to themselves instead of the world around them. Fear, ego, impatience, they get in the way. I've learned to let go of all of that. She took out a worn notebook filled with years of notes from training, hunting, and combat. Diagrams of wind patterns, elevation adjustments, even sketches of mountains and ridges. Every page was a record of her experience, a guide for understanding the invisible forces that govern the long-range shot. Harris flipped through it slowly. This is insane. You've tracked every variable imaginable. I have to, Dana said simply. The distance I shoot is unforgiving. One mistake and someone dies. Every shot is a question, and every calculation is the answer. There's no room for error. He closed the notebook carefully. No wonder the general keeps asking about you. You don't just shoot, you orchestrate everything around it. Dana nodded. It's not about orchestrating. It's about observing. Control what you can, predict what you can't, and trust the rest to the world. Later that night, Dana trained in the shadows outside her tent. She adjusted her rifle for extreme distances, practiced breathing techniques, and recalculated wind and elevation for hypothetical shots across ridges she had never seen. Her mind moved faster than her fingers, mapping trajectories, angles, and potential outcomes. Harris watched from a distance, silently in awe. He had been trained, disciplined, and skilled, but nothing prepared him for this. Dana wasn't just a sniper, she was a master of patience, perception, and precision, applying lessons learned long before the military ever existed. You're obsessive, he said finally. Dana didn't look at him. Discipline is survival, she said. Without it, luck becomes the only ally. Luck fails. Discipline doesn't. He shook his head. And you learned all this as a kid? I learned how to survive, she said softly. Then I learned how to save others. By dawn, Dana had completed another full cycle of preparation. Rifle calibrated, angles calculated, environmental variables noted. She wrote down every adjustment, every observation, every potential variable in her notebook. To her, these weren't just notes, they were lifelines, maps of certainty in a chaotic world. Harris approached quietly. Do you ever think about slowing down? Taking a step back from all this? Dana finally looked at him. Her eyes were tired but steady, reflecting a calm that seemed unbreakable. I can't, she said. Every time I stop, someone pays the price. Every time I breathe, I have a chance to prevent that. He sighed. And that's why you're one of a kind. Dana smiled faintly. I hope there's someone else like me someday. But for now, I'm the one who listens. She packed her notebook and rifle carefully into their cases. The base around her was waking, soldiers preparing for another day, unaware of the precise orchestration that had kept them alive. The general would soon call, and another mission would demand her focus, her patience, and her unwavering calm. As Dana walked toward the command tent, Harris followed silently. He understood now that her skill wasn't in her hands, or even in her rifle. It was in her mind, her discipline, her ability to become part of the world she observed. She didn't fight with bullets alone. She fought with silence, patience, and listening. And that was what made her unbeatable. By the time Dana reported to the general that morning, she was calm, precise, and ready. The world around her could spin, explode, or collapse, but in her mind, the rhythm of wind, earth, and distance was steady. She had mastered it long before the army, and she would master it long after. She was the silent storm, the unseen force, the ghost of Cooner Ridge, and no one could ever stop her, not because she was unstoppable, but because she listened where others only watched. The world outside the base seemed to move at an impossible speed, but Dana Cole moved through it quietly, like a shadow. News of her 3,812-meter shot had spread beyond the military, reaching media outlets, defense analysts, and long-range shooting communities worldwide. Headlines called it the impossible shot and a record beyond belief. Yet Dana remained untouched by the spectacle. Inside the base, the general summoned her to the command tent. A large screen displayed a satellite map of the valley where the shot had taken place. Analysts were gathered, along with officers who rarely left their chairs, all buzzing with excitement. Sergeant Cole, the general began, his voice calm but firm. You've not only saved lives, but set a record that may never be broken. The Pentagon wants a full analysis, your methods, your calculations, everything. And the scientific community wants data. They want to study your shot. Dana listened silently, her fingers clasped together. I'll provide the data, she said simply. But there's nothing extraordinary beyond what I've already done. The general raised an eyebrow. Do you realize what you've accomplished? At 3,812 meters, factoring in wind, gravity, temperature, mirage, and movement, that shot has rewritten what's possible in military marksmanship. No one else has ever hit a target at that distance with such precision. Statisticians are calling it a once-in-a-millennium occurrence. Dana's face remained calm. It wasn't statistics. It was observation, patience, and listening to the environment. One analyst, clearly skeptical, piped up. Observation? Most snipers use advanced ballistic software, laser rangefinders, and environmental modeling. You're telling us a single person, relying on instinct and experience, accomplished what technology alone couldn't. Dana nodded. Experience matters. Patience matters. Silence matters. Technology is a tool, not the answer. Over the next few days, Dana's life became a blur of meetings, briefings, and interviews. Engineers analyzed her rifle and ammunition. Scientists simulated her shot on computers, and military strategists tried to recreate it. Despite all the attention, Dana remained detached. She answered questions with precision, but never elaborated unnecessarily. She refused accolades beyond the base and declined televised interviews. Fame, she believed, was irrelevant. The quiet work of saving lives carried its own reward. Harris watched her navigate the whirlwind with a mixture of admiration and concern. Cole, he said one evening, people are calling you a hero, a legend. They want to make you the face of marksmanship forever. Don't you feel something? Dana paused, watching the fading sunlight over the mountains. I feel responsibility, she said. Every shot has consequences. Every life saved or lost matters more than recognition. That's the only thing I answer to. Harris shook his head. Some people would trade everything to be in your position. The fame, the medals, the recognition. Dana smiled faintly. I don't need them. My reward is seeing those 30 men walk out of that valley alive. Everything else is noise. The official report of her shot reached the Pentagon within a week. Military analysts confirmed what Dana had already done. Her shot was unprecedented. Experts marveled at her ability to compensate for environmental variables intuitively. Her calculation of wind shifts, elevation, and gravity defied conventional understanding. The world's top long-range marksmen studied her methods, attempting to replicate her results, but none could match her combination of skill, patience, and instinct. Dana, however, continued her routine. She trained silently, prepared for the next mission, and maintained her rifle as if it were an extension of her body. The recognition didn't change her, and she had no desire for it to. One night, Harris found her perched atop a ridge outside the base, rifle beside her, staring at the valley below. "They're still talking about you," he said. "Across the globe, Cole. Military forums, news reports. Even universities are analyzing your shot. People want to understand the method, the math, the science. You've inspired a generation of snipers and scientists alike." Dana didn't turn. "They can study the numbers all they want. It won't change the shot. The moment it happened is gone. What matters is what I did afterward, saving lives." He sat beside her, quiet for a moment. "Do you ever think about what it means? That you've set a standard nobody else may ever reach?" Donna finally looked at him, her eyes calm and unwavering. "Standards are for the living. Records are for the books. Life is for the people in the valley. That's what matters. Everything else is temporary." Despite her quiet demeanor, her reputation continued to grow. Military schools invited her to give lectures. Technology firms wanted to test sniper software against her instincts. And marksmanship magazines ran profiles of her unparalleled shot. The story spread internationally. The woman who had silenced the impossible at 3,812 meters. Yet Dana remained unreachable in her focus. She didn't seek recognition, and she didn't seek fame. The attention was a byproduct of necessity, not ego. She knew that every story written about her, every headline, every statistic, did not change the lives she had saved, and that was all that mattered. Harris, observing her from the sidelines, remarked one evening, "Cole, most people would be exhilarated by this. You're remarkably calm about all of it." Donna cleaned her rifle methodically. "Exhilaration fades. Responsibility doesn't. I can't allow the thrill of recognition to distract me from the work that comes next. There are always missions, always people who need protection. That's my focus." Weeks later, the military officially documented her achievement as a record-breaking shot, and the news reached global publications. Analysts debated whether it would ever be surpassed. Marksmanship schools studied her technique. But Donna remained distant from it all, knowing the truth of her skill lay not in reports or numbers, but in discipline, patience, and listening. At the base, life continued. Soldiers trained, helicopters arrived, missions unfolded, and Dana Cole prepared quietly for the next call. She remained focused on what mattered: observation, precision, and ensuring that her next shot would protect lives rather than seek recognition. Harris finally asked her one evening, "Do you ever think people will understand the real skill behind what you do?" Donna smiled faintly, her eyes tracing the ridges that stretched into the distance. "Some might. Most won't, and that's fine. I don't need them to understand. I only need to listen." In that quiet moment, she realized the paradox of her life. She had become a global legend, yet she remained invisible in the only ways that mattered. The world could admire her shot, study her methods, even celebrate her skill, but no accolade could ever replace the silent discipline that had made her extraordinary. She was the ghost of Cunner Ridge, unseen, unheard, and yet impossible to ignore when her focus fell on a target. And though the world knew her name, only the mountains, the wind, and the valleys truly understood the magnitude of her presence. The sun rose slowly over the mountains, spilling gold across the base. Donna Cole stood on a ridge, rifle in hand, observing the valley below. Despite the global recognition of her record-breaking 3,812-meter shot, her mind remained focused on what always mattered: the lives of the men and women under her watch. Fame was fleeting. Precision, patience, and responsibility were eternal. She reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From the Rockies, where a father had taught her the value of silence and observation, to the unforgiving valleys of Afghanistan, every lesson had shaped her. Every morning, every calculation, every moment of stillness had prepared her for the impossible. She had learned to hear what others ignored, the subtle shift of the wind, the way dust danced in sunlight, the rhythm of a valley waiting for a decision. Harris approached quietly, as he always did, carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee. "Morning, Cole," he said softly. Dana accepted the cup without looking at him. "Morning. Another quiet one," he noted, scanning the valley. "Ever think about retiring? Walking away from all of this? You could write a book, teach, lecture. People would follow you anywhere." Dana shook her head. "I didn't join to be followed. I joined to listen and act. Every life counts. Everything else is noise." He sighed, impressed but frustrated. "Still, you've inspired more people than you'll ever know. Not just soldiers, civilians, scientists, aspiring marksmen. They're studying you, learning from you. You're a legend, Cole. Isn't that worth acknowledging?" Dana looked out at the distant peaks, the wind carrying the faint echo of past missions. Legends don't save lives. People do. Recognition doesn't protect anyone. Discipline, patience, observation. That's what saves lives. The rest is temporary. The rest is noise. Harris smiled faintly, realizing that words could not penetrate the core of her philosophy. Dana's greatness was not in her record, her fame, or even her unmatched skill. It was in her devotion to the principles that had kept so many alive. That day, Dana led a training session for new snipers. She demonstrated more than technique. She taught observation, patience, and listening. She emphasized the intangible lessons she had learned in the Rockies and on countless missions. She showed them how to measure wind, predict movement, and understand terrain. Most importantly, she taught them how to become still, how to control their heartbeat, and how to wait for the perfect moment. Her students watched in awe. They had studied her legend in textbooks and articles, but seeing her live, silent, and precise was transformative. Every movement she made, every instruction she gave, was deliberate, calculated, and rooted in experience. She was not just demonstrating skill, she was imparting wisdom, the kind that could save lives under impossible conditions. Harris observed from the sidelines, noting how the students responded to her presence. "You don't just teach them to shoot," he murmured to himself. "You teach them to survive, to respect the silence." After the session, Dana returned to her tent. She sat quietly, polishing her rifle and reflecting on the legacy she was creating. She had saved dozens of lives with her unprecedented shot and countless others through training and mentorship. Yet, she remained anonymous in the ways that mattered most. The world knew her name, but only she, the mountains, and the wind truly understood the depth of her skill. Her thoughts drifted back to her father, to the quiet mornings in the Rockies. She remembered his words, "The world speaks to those who listen. Silence is full of answers." Those lessons had carried her through combat, through impossible shots, and through the weight of responsibility. They had shaped her into a sniper, capable of rewriting history without ever seeking the spotlight. She realized that her true legacy was not the record, not the headlines, not the medals. It was the lives saved, the knowledge passed to future snipers, and the example she set for precision, discipline, and patience. She had proven that quiet observation, unwavering focus, and respect for the environment could achieve what seemed impossible. Days turned into weeks, and Dana continued her work with the same quiet determination. She accompanied reconnaissance teams, protected convoys, and mentored new snipers. Each mission tested her skill, patience, and judgment. Each life she saved reaffirmed her philosophy. Discipline and observation mattered more than recognition. Even as her name became legendary, Dana maintained her distance from the accolades. She did not seek interviews or public appearances. Instead, she devoted herself to preparation and training. ensuring that every decision she made was guided by experience and wisdom. One evening, as she perched on a ridge overlooking the valley, Harris joined her. "You've changed the way snipers will be trained for generations," he said softly. Dana didn't respond immediately. She traced the contours of the mountains with her eyes, listening to the subtle whispers of wind across rocks and ridges. Finally, she said, "I hope they listen more than they shoot. That's the real lesson." Harris nodded, understanding at last. Dana's greatness was not just in her ability to hit impossible targets. It was in her mastery of stillness, observation, and patience. Months later, the military recognized her officially with medals, commendations, and citations. Yet Dana accepted them silently, aware that such symbols could never measure the responsibility she carried or the lives she had saved. She polished each medal meticulously and returned to her tent, where her rifle lay ready, her notebook of observations open, and her mind calm and focused. She continued to lead, mentor, and protect. She did not seek glory, yet her influence spread. Future snipers studied her techniques, learned her principles, and tried to emulate the precision, patience, and quiet strength that defined her. Across the military and beyond, Dana Cole became a symbol, not of fame or recognition, but of discipline, responsibility, and the power of listening to the world around you. Harris often reflected on her impact. "She could have sought fame, money, anything," he said one night. But instead, she chose to teach, protect, and save lives. That's a legacy most can't even imagine. Dana listened to the wind, now familiar and comforting. She understood that her life's work, her skill, and her discipline were more than accomplishments. They were a responsibility. And in that responsibility, she found purpose, satisfaction, and quiet pride. In the end, Dana Cole's story was more than a record-breaking shot. It was a lesson in patience, observation, and discipline. It was proof that quiet determination could accomplish what others deemed impossible. It was a reminder that recognition is temporary, but the lives one saves and the wisdom one imparts endure forever. As she looked across the mountains, the valleys, and the ridges that had tested her skill and patience, Dana whispered to herself, "One shot, one life, one moment. Listen and act." And in that quiet, the mountains, the wind, and the world remembered her. Dana Cole had become a legend, not through fame, but through the lives she saved, the skills she passed on, and the unbroken silence that carried her through every impossible shot. The ghost of Cooner Ridge would never be forgotten.